I'm Maxine Vermicelli, 34, and I built a steady life by staying dependable, even when no one noticed. For years, I supported my family in quiet ways, covering rent, showing up, keeping secrets. But when my dad stood up at a family reunion, looked me dead in the eye, and called me the loser, I made a choice that changed everything. Have you ever been dismissed by someone you always showed up for? If you have, drop your story in the comments. You're not alone. Before I dive in, tell me where you're watching from. And if you've ever had to draw the line with someone who crossed it one too many times, hit like and subscribe. Because what happened after that night still surprises me. My name is Maxine Vermicelli, and for most of my life, I believed being the steady one was enough. I wasn't the brilliant child, not the one with state championship medals or perfect SAT scores. That was my older brother Jackson. He had the trophies, the scholarship offers, the kind of success that my dad knew how to brag about. My younger sister, Marja, was the performer, theater lead at school, always surrounded by admirers, charming teachers, and family friends alike. She had a way of turning any room into her stage. I didn't compete with either of them. I didn't have to. I was the one who made things easier for everyone else. While Jackson was breaking records and Marja was soaking up applause, I was the one doing the dishes after family dinners without being asked. If someone needed a ride to a practice, I was already halfway to the car. When my mom got migraines, I was the one who learned how to cook simple meals, even though I was only 11. I wasn't trying to impress anyone. I just did what needed to be done. Our house was tidy, suburban, and traditional, the kind with a basketball hoop above the garage, a rotation of family-sized SUVs in the driveway, and shelves full of family photo albums that told a more flattering version of our story than I remember living. My dad, Raymond Vermicelli, worked in commercial construction, hard hat, steel-toe boots, and a deep voice that commanded attention. My mom, Tricia, had a part-time job at a local clinic and a full-time role as the person who made sure birthdays were celebrated, lunches were packed, and social calendars were full. Dad liked order. He liked results. He wasn't a cruel man, but he was deliberate with his attention. And more often than not, that attention skipped right over me. At first, I thought that was just how it was. Jackson had his football games, and Dad never missed a single one. He was always in the stands, yelling so loud you could hear him across the parking lot. Marja had her dance recitals, and he'd bring roses, clap harder than anyone. When I got my art displayed in a school hallway, he didn't say anything. Not because he disapproved. Just because he never noticed. I told myself it didn't matter. I wasn't doing things to be noticed. As we got older, the patterns held. Jackson got a job at a tech firm straight out of college and sent out group texts about his new apartment, his bonuses, his big client wins. My dad always responded with enthusiastic thumbs-up emojis, sometimes full paragraphs of praise. Marja became a local news anchor, the kind of public-facing success that made Dad beam. "That's my daughter," he'd tell strangers when the news was on at the dentist's office. I got a quiet job as a library systems coordinator at a local university. I didn't send out group texts. There was never much to report. Still, I showed up. When Jackson lost his job for 6 months during the pandemic and was too proud to ask our parents for help, I sent him grocery store gift cards every week until he was back on his feet. When Marja's apartment flooded and she needed somewhere to stay, I took time off work to help her move her things into storage and even let her crash at my place for 2 weeks, despite barely having space for myself. When Dad needed a ride to his outpatient surgery and Mom couldn't take the day off, I rearranged my meetings, brought snacks, and sat with him for 4 hours in a plastic waiting room chair. He thanked me, of course. A polite, appreciate it, Nat, in that same clipped tone he used with the dental receptionist or the guy who bagged his groceries. I didn't expect more. But something shifted in me the year I turned 30. It started with small things. I realized I had no recent photos with either of my parents. All the framed pictures at their house were of Jackson's kids or Marja at her news desk, or all of us together from 10 years ago. I realized I couldn't remember the last time my dad had asked me a question that wasn't logistical. Never, "How's work going?" or "Are you seeing anyone?" Just, can you pick up your mom's prescription? Or what time is the reunion again? That year, I also noticed I was tired in a way that didn't come from lack of sleep. Tired from being the helper. From smoothing things over, from showing up out of obligation. I wasn't angry, just drained. When the invitation to our extended family reunion arrived in the mail, I almost didn't go. It was one of those multi-day affairs held at a rented lodge, complete with matching t-shirts and an overly detailed itinerary. Normally, I'd offer to help coordinate carpools or prep side dishes. This time, I RSVP'd yes, but kept my involvement minimal. I didn't offer to help. I didn't volunteer for anything. My siblings, of course, arrived late and loud. Jackson with his wife and 2 kids in coordinated outfits, Marja filming everything for a social media reel. I came alone. Wore a navy shirt and black jeans. Helped my aunt carry a tray of pasta to the buffet table because she was struggling, but otherwise kept to myself. That first night, Dad made his usual rounds. Handshakes. Jokes. Talking shop with my uncles, handing out cigars to the cousins who still thought he was the coolest guy in the room. I stayed out on the deck for most of the evening, sipping soda and watching kids play cornhole in the yard. At one point, my dad passed by and said, "You okay out here by yourself?" "Yeah," I said. "Just needed a little quiet." He nodded and kept walking. That's when I knew nothing had changed. Not really. I think I always believed that someday he'd see me. Not for what I could do for everyone else, but for who I actually was. Someone steady. Reliable. Capable. But I was beginning to understand that maybe he didn't want to see that. Maybe he didn't even know how. Still, I never expected what he would say the next night. Not even in my worst-case scenarios. And I definitely didn't expect how I'd respond. It didn't happen all at once. The shift was gradual, so slow, I think I gaslit myself into believing it was just in my head. When I was in my 20s, I didn't notice it much. Maybe because I was too focused on getting through my workdays and finding little pockets of peace where I could. My job wasn't glamorous, but it was stable. I worked in the library systems office at the university, helping maintain catalog software and troubleshooting account issues. It was the kind of behind-the-scenes role that kept things running but earned no spotlight. And, honestly, I liked it that way. But then Jackson bought a new condo uptown. Dad told everyone, during family dinners, at church, even to the mechanic who changed his oil. My son just closed on a place near the lake. Corner unit, hardwood floors, views of the skyline. He's doing great. He said it with pride, puffed up like he'd personally negotiated the mortgage. When I signed the lease on my first apartment, a small but clean 2-bedroom unit a few blocks from work, no one said anything. Not even a casual, nice place when they stopped by to help me move in. My dad stayed in the car most of that day, complaining about his knee. That same year, Marja got promoted to co-anchor for the morning broadcast at her station. It was a mid-tier job in a mid-tier market, but you'd think she'd been given her own network judging by the reaction. My dad shared the news on Facebook with a long paragraph about perseverance and how proud he was to see his daughter making her mark. I got a quiet raise after leading a campus-wide system migration. I mentioned it at dinner one night, almost as an afterthought while passing the salad. "Oh, and I got bumped up a pay grade last week. New title too." He nodded. "That's nice." Then turned to Jackson and asked about his fantasy football league. At first, I told myself I just didn't have the kind of career that lends itself to bragging rights. That it wasn't personal. That they didn't mean anything by it. I repeated those excuses for years. But things started to add up. We were at a birthday dinner for our mom, the kind where we booked a table for 12 and spent the evening shouting over each other across plates of pasta. Halfway through, a family friend from Dad's office stopped by to say hello. He was tall, older, dressed in a tailored suit, clearly used to being listened to. Dad stood up and shook his hand. "Hey, good to see you. This is my crew, my son Jackson, our family's tech whiz. And this is Marja, the face of morning news around here." Then he turned to me. "And this is Maxine." That was it. No context. No title. Not even a joke. Just my name, like I was the neighbor's daughter tagging along. It wasn't an oversight. It was a pattern. My siblings noticed it too, though not in the way I hoped. They leaned into it. Made it a punchline. At Christmas, Marja handed me a gift bag with a sarcastic grin. Something to spice up your thrilling office life, she said. Inside was a mug that read "World's Okayest Employee." Jackson thought that was hilarious. Well, at least she's consistent. You still at that campus job, Nat? I smiled politely. Yeah, 7 years this spring. Damn, he said, shaking his head. I'd lose my mind. Don't you ever get bored? It wasn't just the words. It was the tone. Like I'd chosen something lesser, and they were indulging it the way you humor someone who insists on living without air conditioning. That spring, I helped Dad organize a surprise party for our mom's 60th. I handled the catering, designed the invitations, rented the space, even built a slideshow of family photos that made everyone cry. The night went smoothly. No hiccups, no drama. As we were packing up, Jackson clapped me on the shoulder and said, "You should have gone into event planning, Nat. You're good at this assistant stuff." I don't think he meant to be cruel. I really don't. But that almost made it worse. The condescension was casual, baked into the fabric of how they saw me. The more I paid attention, the more I realized that in their eyes, I wasn't a real adult. Not like them. I was dependable. Practical. The one who helped out, picked up the slack, remembered birthdays, and carried folding chairs back to the car. But never the one worth celebrating. The tipping point came at a Sunday lunch at my parents' house. It was one of those casual gatherings, grilled burgers, paper plates, lemonade in mismatched cups. We were all sitting around the patio table when Dad turned to his friend Greg, who'd stopped by for a beer, and said, "I've got 3 kids, but only one real shot at success." He pointed his thumb at Jackson, who laughed and raised his bottle in mock salute. I was sitting right there. No one looked at me. No one corrected him. It was so quick, so offhand, that I could have let it slide. But it echoed in my head for days afterward. Only one real shot at success. I thought about the time I helped Jackson revise his resume line by line when he was panicking over an interview. About how I used my vacation days to help Marja recover from surgery and stayed overnight on her couch so she wouldn't have to be alone. About every quiet thing I'd done without asking for credit. It didn't count. Not to them. Even Mom, who usually played peacekeeper, had started picking up the same tone. One day, I mentioned a training program I was doing at work, an advanced certification in data systems that took months to complete. She smiled, then said, "That's great, honey. Maybe someday you'll move into a more ambitious role." A more ambitious role. Like 7 years of running infrastructure for a major university wasn't already demanding. Like ambition only counted if it came with a corner office or a spotlight. The stories they told about me weren't unkind. They were just small. That I liked puzzles. That I was good with spreadsheets. That I was the one you could count on if your printer broke or you needed help moving. I started realizing that if I disappeared tomorrow, my absence would be inconvenient, not devastating. By the time the family reunion rolled around, I had stopped waiting for recognition. I still showed up, still brought snacks, and remembered everyone's dietary restrictions. But I started saying no more often. No, I couldn't dog sit for Jackson's weekend trip. No, I wasn't free to help Marja with her tax forms. It felt like a quiet rebellion. A small reclaiming of space. But it wasn't enough to prepare me for what Dad said that night at the reunion. That line, that moment, would tear the whole facade apart. And for once, I wouldn't let it slide. The reunion was held at this big rental lodge 2 hours north of the city. High ceilings, overstuffed furniture, too many framed quotes about family and faith. It had the kind of echo you only hear in spaces designed for people to perform happiness. You could hear every fork scrape and every half-laugh bouncing off the walls. We arrived Friday night. I got there early, as usual. Helped one of my aunts unpack the coolers, set out the buffet trays, label the desserts. Jackson rolled in an hour late with a Bluetooth speaker blaring 90s hip-hop. Marja swept in behind him with her rolling suitcase and 3 outfit bags, filming the entryway for her Instagram story. Vermicelli family reunion, day 1, she narrated, flipping her hair and smiling at the camera. I stayed off camera. I always did. The first night passed in that odd way these events usually do, people you haven't seen in years acting like they know you better than you know yourself. Cousins commenting on how I still looked so quiet. An uncle asking if I was still single and working at that book place. I corrected him gently, it's a university, and I work in systems, not books. He nodded vaguely and wandered off mid-sentence. By Saturday afternoon, people had settled into their roles. Jackson played the charming eldest, tossing a football with the younger cousins, swapping career stories with the uncles, giving unsolicited stock tips like he was prepping for CNBC. Marja had positioned herself as the center of attention in every room, somehow both orchestrating and participating in every conversation. She even had matching t-shirts printed for her candid photo ops. And me? I was organizing the name tags that got mixed up and showing Aunt Cheryl how to switch her phone off airplane mode. The dinner that night was the main event. Long banquet tables lined with votives and floral centerpieces, courtesy of Marja's college friend who owed her a favor. There was a printed program, of course, with a schedule of speeches and a toast by our father to close it out. I sat near the end of the table, between two cousins deep in a debate about fantasy novels. I didn't mind. It was comfortable being peripheral. I could hear snippets of my siblings' voices from the middle of the table, louder than necessary, like they were performing for a room that didn't need a show. Dad was in rare form. His tie was off, shirt sleeves rolled up, red in the face from too much wine or just too much performance. I knew that version of him, the one who leaned hard into jokes, who laughed a little too loud at his own stories, who got mean when he thought he was being clever. When it was time for his toast, he stood up and tapped the side of his glass with a knife. People quieted slowly. Marja pulled out her phone to record. Jackson gave a mock bow. Dad cleared his throat. I just want to say, I'm proud of my kids. There was scattered applause. Some of the relatives started to raise their glasses. Dad held up his hand to stop them. No. Let me finish. He swayed slightly as he shifted his weight. I'm proud of all my children, except the loser. There was a pause. Not the kind filled with confusion. The kind filled with recognition. He was looking directly at me. Jackson choked on a laugh. Marja let out a high-pitched giggle that she tried to smother with her wine glass. A few people at the table chuckled uncertainly, glancing around to see if it was safe to laugh too. No one said anything to stop him. I didn't cry. I didn't even blink. I stood up slowly. My chair scraped back against the wooden floor. The sound made people look up. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't smile. I just looked at my father and said, "Funny, Dad. I was just about to tell everyone about your secret." The words landed like a dropped plate. Marja stopped filming. Jackson's smirk faltered. Even the cousins down the table stopped chewing. My dad's face went completely still. The red drained from it, leaving behind something pale and sharp-edged. No idea what you mean, he said, but his voice was tight. I think you do, I replied. Want me to say it here or outside? There was silence. Pure, raw silence. My heart was pounding, but my voice didn't shake. I kept my hands at my sides. I didn't blink. I didn't let myself blink. He didn't answer. I looked around the table, at aunts and uncles frozen with forks halfway to their mouths, at cousins suddenly pretending to look at their phones, at my mom whose face had gone slack with confusion. Then I walked out. I didn't look back. I walked out the side door of the lodge, into the gravel parking lot lit by string lights and the faint pink haze of early evening. The air felt colder than it was. I stood there for a long time, hands in my pockets, staring at the ground. I could hear the muffled sound of voices inside, chairs scraping, the low thrum of someone trying to recover the evening, probably Jackson saying something glib or Marja faking a laugh. But no one came out. Not for a while. Eventually, my cousin Hannah stepped outside and offered me her sweater. She didn't ask questions. Just stood next to me. After a minute, she said quietly, that was overdue. I nodded. I didn't need to say anything else. That night, I slept at a motel 10 minutes down the road. I didn't text anyone. I didn't answer the 3 missed calls from Mom. In the morning, I checked out without saying goodbye. But the moment had already started to ripple. The story would spread through the family, first in whispers, then in quiet confrontations. People would start asking what I meant, what I knew. And for the first time, I didn't feel the urge to protect him. I just felt done. Really, fully done. I stayed at Layla's place that night. She was one of the few people I trusted with the unfiltered version of things, the kind of friend who doesn't ask why you showed up at 9:47 p.m. with an overnight bag and no explanation. She took one look at my face and just opened the door wider. "I've got leftover Thai and 2 bottles of wine," she said, already walking toward the kitchen. "You want food or fire first?" "Fire," I said. We sat in her living room, the lights low, me on the couch with my knees tucked under a throw blanket, Layla cross-legged on the floor with a glass of red wine she hadn't even tasted yet. I told her everything. I started with the comment, "I'm proud of all my children, except the loser." I didn't even have to explain who he meant. Then I told her what I said back. About the way he froze, the silence in the room, and how no one, not one person, stood up for me. She just listened. Quiet, no interruptions. Only refilled my glass when it got low. But then I kept talking. I told her about the thing I'd found out last year. The thing I hadn't told anyone in the family. It started with a phone call from my dad, unusual, since he rarely called me unless he needed something. He asked if I could help him scan and format some documents. Said his printer wasn't working and he needed a clean PDF for his accountant. I'd gone over, not thinking much of it. Just assumed it was a tax thing. But when I opened the file, I saw the real story. There had been a lawsuit, quietly settled, one of his old clients accusing him of inflating project costs on a municipal contract. It hadn't made the papers, but the language was serious. There were receipts, transcripts, settlement figures. The account the money had come from wasn't their main joint account, but something separate, hidden. Tucked away under his name only. I didn't say anything at the time. I reformatted the documents, kept the originals saved on a flash drive I never told him about, and walked away feeling like I'd just swallowed a stone. "I didn't tell anyone," I said, staring at the rim of my glass. "Not even Mom." I thought, maybe it wasn't my business. Or maybe I just didn't want to be the one to set everything on fire. Layla leaned forward. "You protected him." I nodded. "Yeah, you protected a man who wouldn't even introduce you with a sentence at dinner. Who called you a loser in front of your entire family." I didn't respond. I didn't have to. The next morning, I woke up on her couch with a stiff neck and a deep, heavy kind of calm. Not relief, but something close to clarity. I made coffee while she showered, then sat at her kitchen table and stared out the window at the small, neat backyard she'd built for herself, potted herbs, a folding chair, string lights she'd hung herself. I thought about all the ways I had shaped my life around everyone else's convenience. How I'd answered every phone call, shown up for every errand, stayed quiet every time someone diminished me in conversation. And for what? To be tolerated. Managed. Smirked at. I thought about how many times I'd replayed my father's words from that night. Not just the insult, but the casualness of it. Like it wasn't even meant to wound, just to entertain. A throwaway joke that revealed the truth underneath everything. I had always known where I stood. That night just confirmed it. When I got back to my apartment, there were 3 voicemails from my mom. 2 were vague, "We need to talk, Nat. Your dad's upset. Just call me, okay?" And the 3rd was more clipped. "I don't know what you were trying to do last night, but that wasn't appropriate. You need to apologize to your father." I didn't respond. I opened my laptop and backed up the flash drive to an encrypted folder. Not because I wanted to use it, not yet, but because I wasn't going to pretend it didn't exist anymore. That afternoon, I sat down and wrote out a list. Not of everything I'd done for my family. I wasn't keeping score. But of the moments I'd protected them when no one had done the same for me. Helping Jackson cover rent 3 years ago when he lost his job and didn't want Mom and Dad to know, proofreading Marja's grad school application while she was in Mexico, driving Dad to his colonoscopy and staying in the waiting room for 6 hours without a single thank you, not telling anyone about the hidden account or the settlement, showing up to every family dinner even when I knew I'd sit at the edge of the table and leave without being asked a single question about my life. I stared at that list for a long time. Then I folded the page in half, slid it into a drawer, and made myself dinner. The next day, Jackson texted me. Just one line. "What the hell did you mean by Dad's secret?" I didn't answer. Marja sent a voice memo 2 hours later, all false concern and subtle warning. "Hey, so, things kind of blew up after you left. I don't know what's going on with you and Dad, but maybe keep stuff like that private? It's just not a good look to air dirty laundry like that in front of family. Anyway, hope you're okay." I deleted it. Then I opened a blank email draft and typed out a message to my father. I didn't send it. Not yet. But I let myself write it. I told him that I knew about the settlement. That I'd helped him cover it up, quietly and without complaint. That I'd been holding his secrets longer than I'd held my own self-respect. And that I wasn't doing it anymore. I closed the laptop without saving the draft. Sometimes you need to say things, even if no one hears them. Even if the only person who sees them is you. That week, I stopped answering family texts. I muted the group chat. I didn't send photos or check in on anyone's job changes or kids' birthdays. I went to work, I came home, I made my life small, not out of shame, but out of choice. And in that quiet, I started hearing myself again. Not being angry, I realized, isn't the same thing as being okay. I wasn't okay. But I wasn't invisible anymore either. I sent the message on a Tuesday morning, 23 words, no punctuation beyond the period at the end. "I'm done protecting your secrets. If you want to explain what happened before others find out, now's the time." I didn't reread it before hitting send. I didn't wait for a response. I got up, poured coffee, logged into work like it was any other day. But something in the air around me felt different, clearer. He called within the hour. At first, he didn't say anything. Just heavy breathing on the other end, like he couldn't decide which version of himself to bring to this conversation. Then he landed on anger. "What the hell is wrong with you?" I didn't answer. "You think threatening your own father makes you what, some kind of hero?" he continued. "You're playing with fire, Maxine. You think you know something, but you don't understand what that settlement meant. You have no idea what you're talking about." I stayed silent. "Say something." "I don't need to," I said. "I already did." That's when he pivoted. From rage to guilt. Classic. "You have any idea what this will do to your mother? She doesn't know. You want to humiliate her? Ruin your parents' marriage? Over what?" A dumb comment at a reunion. It was fascinating how quickly he reframed it. Made my boundary the issue. Pretended like the comment had been a harmless joke, like I was overreacting instead of finally reacting at all. "She deserves to know," I said calmly. "Everyone does. You're not thinking straight. You've always been sensitive." "I'm done," I said, cutting him off. "I'm done being the quiet one." He hung up. For a few minutes, I stared at the call log. Then I put my phone face down and went back to work. That afternoon, the ripple effect started. Jackson texted first. "Hey, just talked to Dad. What's going on? What's this about some secret? Are you okay?" I didn't answer. 10 minutes later. "Nat, seriously. Are you trying to cause a scandal or something?" Still no response. Then Marja, "Just got off the phone with Dad. You really crossed a line. If you have some kind of issue with him, take it up privately. Don't drag the whole family into it." Her follow-up came an hour later. "I mean it. This isn't healthy. If you're spiraling, please talk to someone. But don't wreck our family just to make a point." Wreck our family. As if that hadn't already happened years ago in smaller, quieter ways. I didn't reply to her either. Later that night, Mom called. I let it ring. She left a voicemail. Her voice was brittle. "I don't know what's going on between you and your father, but this has gone too far. I don't know what you think you found, but you need to let it go. We've been through enough, Maxine. Please don't do this." That word, enough, kept echoing in my head. They had been through enough. Had I not? I went for a walk. Just around the block. I didn't take my phone. Didn't listen to music. Just let my feet carry me past dark porches and quiet windows. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked once, then stopped. When I got home, I made dinner. Then I opened the encrypted folder on my laptop. It was all there, the settlement documents, the bank statements, the signature pages. Enough to prove the lawsuit had happened. Enough to show it was hidden deliberately. I emailed a copy to myself. VCC'd it to a second email. Saved it to a password-protected drive. Then I sat still and just breathed. I didn't want to expose him. Not really. I just wanted the weight gone. The next morning, I got another text from Jackson. "You're not thinking clearly. You're seriously going to blow up Dad's reputation over something you barely understand? You want to be the reason our family falls apart?" The implication was clear. If I kept going, if I didn't back down, I would be blamed for what came next. But something had shifted. The fear that used to keep me small didn't feel like fear anymore. It felt like clarity. Because the truth was, I hadn't made the mess. I'd just stopped sweeping it under the rug. By Thursday, the silence started. No more texts. No more calls. I knew what that meant. They were circling the wagons. I imagined the conversations. She's always been unstable. Maybe she's jealous. She's probably exaggerating. Let's just write it out. But I stayed quiet. Still. I didn't reach out. Didn't explain myself. Didn't leak anything. I let them wonder. Friday afternoon, Layla came over with takeout and zero judgment. "I've never seen you this calm," she said, passing me a container of noodles. "I've never said no this loudly before," I replied. She nodded. "That'll do it." The thing about holding the line, really holding it, is that people who are used to stepping over it start to panic. They start yelling, accusing, minimizing, reframing. Because your silence becomes louder than any confrontation. I wasn't playing defense anymore. I was just done. No follow-up email. No dramatic reveal. No Facebook post. I didn't need an audience. I had the truth. And for the first time, I was letting them carry the weight of it. Whether they crumbled under it or not wasn't my problem anymore. It started with a phone call I didn't answer. The voicemail was short. A man's voice I didn't recognize, calm but clipped. "Hey, Ray, give me a call when you get a second." Heard something weird from a friend of a friend. Figured I'd check in before rumors get legs. He didn't leave a name. But my father must have known exactly who it was. I didn't send anything. I hadn't made a scene. But word had gotten out anyway, probably from someone at the reunion, or someone who overheard something they weren't supposed to. That's how these things happen. One raised eyebrow, one offhand comment, and suddenly someone's asking questions that were never supposed to be asked. Layla called it gravity. That truth has mass. It pulls. You can't drop something like I did and expect it not to ripple. From what I gathered, it was one of his old subcontractors who asked the first real question. Someone who worked with him during the municipal project, the one connected to the settlement I found. The man was retired now, but still close enough to the circles that mattered. His name came up in a text Marja sent to Jackson, which Jackson apparently forwarded to my mom, who then called me and left a message with just one sentence: "You've embarrassed your father." That was all it said. Nothing about the details. Nothing about the lawsuit or the account or the silence that made it all possible. Just that. I listened to the voicemail once, then deleted it. I didn't return the call. Meanwhile, things started shifting in small but visible ways. My father canceled a weekend fishing trip with 3 men he's known for 2 decades. A meeting he was supposed to lead at the Contractors Association got quietly reassigned to someone else. His LinkedIn account, which he'd once proudly updated every 6 months with some new accolade, went blank. Just name, title, and no profile photo. None of this was public. It wasn't scandalous enough for headlines. No one was marching outside his office or filing complaints. But the shine had dulled. And in his world, where perception was everything, that was worse. One afternoon, I got a text from Jackson. "Did you tell someone outside the family? Dad's getting calls. It's turning into a thing." I left it unread. 3 days later, he sent another. "Okay, I get it. I was a jerk. You didn't deserve that at the reunion." I shouldn't have laughed. That one I read twice. Not because I thought it was sincere, but because I wasn't sure what he wanted it to mean. There was no apology for the years before that night. For the jokes, the condescension, the way he'd mirrored our father's dismissal like it was gospel. But still, it was something. A crack in the pattern. I didn't reply. Instead, I took a long walk through the arboretum near my apartment, where everything was in full bloom, sharp, vivid, unapologetic. It struck me how little time I'd spent outside just being still in the last few years. I'd been too busy trying to carry things. Roles, silence, other people's comfort. Letting go didn't feel like dropping something heavy. It felt like stepping out from underneath it. Marja was next. Her tone was different. She called on a Tuesday evening while I was folding laundry. I didn't recognize the number at first. She must have called from her station line, but something told me to pick up. "Hey," she said. "I don't expect you to say anything. I wanted to say something." I sat down slowly on the edge of my bed. I've been thinking about the reunion and what Dad said and how I laughed. And I need to own that. I didn't think about what it would feel like for you, hearing that. I just followed the lead like I always have. Silence stretched between us. I know you probably don't want to hear this, but I've been remembering all the times you showed up. For me. For all of us. And how we never really said thank you. I don't know why it took that moment to see it, but I see it now. Her voice cracked a little, then steadied. "I'm not asking you to forgive me. I just needed you to know I'm sorry." I believed her. Not entirely, but enough. "Thanks," I said. "I'm not ready to talk more than this. But thanks for saying that." She exhaled, like she'd been holding her breath. "Okay, I'll give you space." She hung up before I could reply. Afterward, I stared at the laundry for a long time, then folded the last towel and put it away. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt steady. That was the word that kept returning. Like something in me had recalibrated. In the weeks that followed, I watched things shift slowly. At first, it was just absence. Fewer group messages. No more invitations to Sunday dinners. Mom didn't call anymore. Jackson stayed silent. Marja sent a birthday text that felt careful, measured. No one mentioned the documents. No one asked about the flash drive or the details. But I knew they were talking about it. I could feel it in the quiet. There was no dramatic fallout. No implosion. Just a slow erosion of the version of events they'd all been comfortable with for so long. And me? I went on with my life. I signed up for a certification course in data analytics. Took a solo weekend trip to Asheville. Switched my phone to Do Not Disturb more often. Started thinking about moving, just far enough that people wouldn't expect me to be on call anymore. The space I'd carved for myself was still small, but it finally felt like mine. Not the version of me they'd decided I was. Not the helper. Not the background character. Just a woman building a life on her own terms, no longer asking to be seen. Whatever my father had to explain to his old colleagues, to his church friends, to the men at his weekly poker game, that was his burden now. I wasn't holding it anymore. And I wasn't shrinking to make him more comfortable. I had finally stepped out of a role I was never meant to play. And I wasn't stepping back in. It came in the mail, of all things. A small, cream-colored envelope with my name written in block letters. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting immediately. My father always wrote like he was filling out a government form, sharp angles, rigid spacing, too much pressure on the pen. I stood in the hallway of my apartment, shoes still on, groceries in one hand, the envelope in the other. I didn't open it right away. I set it on the counter and went about the rest of my evening like it wasn't sitting there, staring at me. It wasn't fear. It wasn't even dread. It was more like tired curiosity. Like someone returning to a book they never finished, already knowing how the last few chapters would probably go. I opened it before bed. No salutation. No, "Dear Maxine." Just one sentence, written in the same all-caps handwriting. I was wrong. I hope one day we can talk. That was it. No apology. No details. No acknowledgement of what he'd done, what he'd said, or what I'd carried. I read it twice. Then a third time, slower. There was something hollow about it. Not malicious. Not even manipulative. Just limited. Like it was the most he could offer, and he thought it might be enough. It wasn't. But I didn't tear it up. I didn't throw it away. The next morning, I wrote back. Maybe, but I won't tolerate disrespect again. I didn't add anything else. No anger. No explanation. No timeline. I sealed it, addressed it, and dropped it in the mailbox on the way to work. I didn't expect a response. And none came. But I imagined him reading it, imagined him standing in the kitchen, turning the page over like maybe he'd missed something, like maybe there was supposed to be more. There wasn't. Not from me. Not yet. The thing about rebuilding trust is that it doesn't start with a sentence. It starts with the things people do when no one's watching. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't watching. I wasn't waiting. The door wasn't locked. But I wasn't holding it open either. Weeks went by. I heard from Marja again. Another cautious text, this time about a fundraiser she was helping organize. She said she was reaching out because one of the donors was from my university and had asked about a back-end system we'd implemented. It was business on the surface, but I could tell she was trying to test the water. I gave her the answer she needed. Nothing more, nothing less. A few days later, she followed up with a picture of her and one of our cousins at the event, both dressed in navy, both smiling like nothing had ever happened. She added, "I miss you sometimes." I didn't know what to do with that. So I didn't do anything at all. Jackson never reached out again. Our mother called once, 2 months after the letter. Left a voicemail. Her tone was clipped but softer than before. "Just checking in. Haven't heard from you. Hope you're doing all right. Let us know if you ever want to come by." It wasn't an apology. It wasn't accountability. But it wasn't cold either. I saved the message, then didn't listen to it again. Somewhere around the 4th month, Layla asked if I'd ever consider going back. Just for a visit. Just to see if things had changed. "I don't know," I told her. "I'm not angry anymore. But I don't want to go somewhere I still have to armor up just to be spoken to like I matter." She nodded. That's fair. Trust, for me, was no longer a gesture. It was a structure. It had to be built, plank by plank. And this time, I wasn't offering the blueprint. I thought about all the years I'd waited for my father to notice me, to acknowledge me, to just ask how I was, not what I could do for him. And now, finally, he had reached out, not with a flood, not with a reckoning, but with a line. A thin, bare string tossed in my direction. And I had tugged it. Gently. But not too hard. I wasn't interested in revenge. I wasn't interested in reconciliation for the sake of optics. I was interested in something much quieter, honesty. And the truth is, I didn't know yet if he was capable of it. But I wasn't slamming the door. That mattered. A few weeks later, I ran into one of his old coworkers at a bookstore downtown. I recognized him from a holiday party years ago, gray hair, firm handshake, the kind of man who always wore a blazer, even on weekends. He looked surprised to see me. "You're Ray's daughter, right?" he said, already extending his hand. "Maxine." I nodded. "Good to see you," he said, then paused. "Heard, there's been some tension." I didn't respond. He nodded, like that was answer enough. "I won't pry. Just, good on you. Not everyone speaks up. Some of us should have a long time ago." He didn't explain. And I didn't ask. But I walked out of the store feeling steadier than I had when I walked in. Trust doesn't rebuild in dramatic conversations. It rebuilds in quiet moments. In withheld assumptions. In the silence that isn't hostile, just honest. That's where I was now. Honest silence. I didn't know what would happen next with my father. Or my mother. Or the siblings who were still slowly orbiting their way back toward me in cautious patterns. But I knew this. If there ever was a bridge to be built, I wasn't laying it alone. And I wasn't rushing. A year later, almost to the week, I moved into a place with more light than I knew what to do with. Tall windows, white walls, a balcony that caught the morning sun like it was designed to remind you not to settle. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine, every part of it chosen instead of inherited, handed down, or assumed. I didn't tell anyone in the family I was moving. Not out of bitterness. Just because it wasn't their business anymore. I'd spent so long making space for them in every corner of my life, physically and emotionally, that keeping something for myself felt almost radical. The business started small. Just me, a laptop, and a couple of clients I'd picked up through word of mouth. Data systems consulting, the kind of work I'd been doing for years quietly in the background, now finally on my own terms. No bosses asking me to stay late. No one leaning over my shoulder, acting like my steady competence was a given rather than a choice. I named the business after a word my grandmother used to say when she was proud: solid. You're solid, Nat, she'd say. Never flashy, never loud, just grounded. Rooted. That was the goal now. My world got smaller, but fuller. Layla was still around, still showing up with food and dry observations. I made new friends through work, through neighbors, through chance. People who didn't know me as the quiet daughter or the one who works behind the scenes. People who saw me as a full person from the beginning. I didn't cut off the family completely. I answered messages now and then, a birthday here, a holiday check-in there. Marja sent a photo of her newborn last month, along with a message that read, "You were right," about how much it matters who shows up. I wrote back, "Congratulations. He's beautiful." That was it. But it felt right. My mother stopped leaving voicemails. I think she got tired of pretending she didn't understand what had happened, or why it had taken me so long to finally draw a line. We still hadn't talked about the letter, the lawsuit, the reunion. Maybe we never would. Some things don't get wrapped up neatly. Some relationships just pause. And my father? Still proud. Still himself. Still living in the house he refused to downsize, still playing the part. But not untouched. I don't know how many people asked him questions, or how he answered. I don't know what version of the truth he decided to tell, or who still believes him. But I know this, he hasn't sent another letter. And he hasn't called. He knows I won't look the other way anymore. And that's enough. That's the shift. Not revenge. Not control. Just no more hiding. I used to think being quiet was a weakness. That it meant being overlooked, or passed over, or left out. I thought if I didn't demand space, I wouldn't get it. But I understand it differently now. Being quiet isn't the same as being small. It means knowing you don't need to shout to be clear. You don't need to explain yourself to people who have already decided who you are. You don't need to carry every burden just because you know how. I used to think I was the background character in my own family. The one who kept the engine running while everyone else held the spotlight. But I wasn't. I was the one holding the map, even if no one bothered to ask for directions. When I finally spoke, calmly, clearly, without apology, it shifted something deeper than any argument ever could. Not just for them. For me. The legacy I left behind wasn't loud. It wasn't explosive. It was a closed door. A paused conversation. A quiet refusal to keep playing a role I never agreed to. And somehow, that changed everything. There's a photo on my new bookshelf. Me and my grandmother, arms around each other, both laughing at something off camera. It was taken years ago, at a birthday I barely remember, but I kept it because of the way she looked at me, like I'd already turned into the woman I hadn't become yet. She used to say that strength doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it just shows up and stays put. That's how I live now. I show up. I stay put. I speak only when it matters. And I never, ever let anyone call me small again. Thanks for watching. Have you ever had to walk away from family to protect your peace? Did anyone try to make you feel guilty for finally standing up for yourself? Let me know in the comments. I read everyone. And if you've ever been labeled the difficult one just for setting a boundary, you're not alone. Hit like if this resonated, and don't forget to subscribe for more real stories about choosing self-respect over silence.